Welcome, everybody. Today, we're here to talk to Jeffrey Schlissel. That's Schlissel like whistle. Jeffrey and I have worked together in the past. Sparks 360 was involved in editing and publishing his book. So part of what we talk about today is going to be about his book, but more importantly, we're going to be talking about what happens after you publish a book, or what happens to motivate you to publish that book in the first place. So Jeffrey is the author. It's called Craveable Obsessed, Journals of a Food Addicted Chef. And the title is intriguing, and so is the content. So you'll hear a little bit more from Jeffrey on that. And for those of you who are listening and can't see, Jeffrey, let me see your shirt again so I can tell people what they can expect. It's fresh sarcasm served daily. So Jeffrey has showed up attired for the occasion. For those of you who are listening in the car with kids, there may be the occasional F-bomb. So you may want to keep that in mind, because we are talking chefs and food and keeping it real. Alrighty. So not only are you an author, you are the owner of the Bacon Cartel, which was, I think, what drew me to get in touch with you the very first time we talked on LinkedIn. So I was like, this guy says the Bacon Cartel. I really, really must know who he is. So that was our first discussion. And then you're also a public speaker. So we're going to hit on all of these things. But Jeffrey, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. It really is.
It's great to talk to you in another context, because you and I had talked previously on Postcards from the Kitchen, and it was really all about food. But today, the reason I thought about bringing you on today was because in some of my networks and circles, we've been talking a lot about thought leadership. And I just thought nobody sort of epitomizes that more than Jeffrey. Because there was a moment where you said, This is what I stand for. This is what I'm going to talk about that nobody else is talking about. So kind of describe that moment to me where you said, dang it, I'm going to do this thing.
Yeah, it was, unfortunately, it took a tragic episode or event to make the catalyst or light the fuse underneath me. In 2018, Chef Bourdain completed his suicide. And I looked at what was he about? Here's a gentleman that traveled the world, had such an influence in the culinary field, seemed to have everything going for him. Everybody was the envy of, you mentioned what he did. He'd be like, man, that'd be awesome to travel and, eat different foods and meet different people, not only in the cuisine style of it, but he had such a way of telling the story and the political ends of it and bringing people together. He really was the epitome of what it is to have food, right? And food and politics, which is really ironic, because about a week ago, I started taking a course in Indian food history, specifically with Kush Dalal, and Keith Saracen kind of was the catalyst for this. And one of the biggest things was about food and politics, and that we'll kind of go 360 or 180 on that one. But I was in the American Culinary Federation. I'm in this huge auditorium. There's 1,400 chefs. Matthew Radford, who is a chef, is talking about PTSD and mental health. There's a psychiatrist up there, and they're talking about Bourdain's death. It was literally a couple of months after his death, if not maybe a month. And they passed around the microphone, and I told my story about my suicide attempt when I was 18. And just across from me was LJ Klink. And this story is kind of in the book too. And LJ's a famous celebrity chef, been on, TV Food Network and Bravo, did a couple different competitions and such. And he broke down, and I didn't really know him that well. And he immediately broke down and was telling me about how his wife saved his life because he was about to complete suicide because of the way he was running his life and trying to find that work-life balance. And I think that was the catalyst for me, because it had been almost 30 years since I had talked about me trying to complete suicide. And I didn't realize, I think I put the letters together about the addiction and the mental health that we go through, burning the midnight oil and trying to find that balance for work and life and home and all of that stuff that goes along, which is the unicorn in the restaurant industry. And that basically was the catalyst for me to go and say, hey, I need to start talking about this.
Yeah. And you did. So in the book, you put it all out there and you told your story. You shined a light on what is happening in the industry and you offered some solutions. So, and I think that's what thought leadership is. It's not just about talking about something people aren't talking about or, or even, shedding your light on it. It's saying, and here's how I dealt with it. Here's how you can take the next step. So we hear a lot about, there's so much more discussion around suicide these days, but I don't think people appreciate what goes on in the restaurant industry and the food industry and how it affects people over the long term. So that's a long way of saying, I think you came back not only with the story, but with the suggestions of next steps. So regardless of what industry somebody's in right now, if they're struggling with this, what are the next steps?
Yeah, I think admitting it is the first one, right? And the thing about it's funny because I'm still going through therapy. It's a lifelong thing.
Yeah.
Recently, I just found out I had ADHD, and it's been from childhood. A buddy of mine who does have ADHD gave me this incredible book called Scattered Minds. And as I'm reading it, I was literally 6 pages into the book, and I put the book down, called him up, and I said, "WTF?" Like, this was my childhood. And now, mind you, he's also in the book. It's the gentleman that I've known for 50 years. And he was like, yeah, I just wanted to make sure you got that. And I'm like, yeah, crystal clear. And I had a point at that. I had a crossroad, and most of us have a crossroad. And that crossroad is all about choice. I could have gone back and asked my mom and said, why the F did you not do something and help me and understand because of all the crap that I went through with my father in schooling? Or I could just be like, hey, that's in my past. There's nothing I can do about that. And how is that going to help me in my future? And, the gift is the present. That's why we call it the present. And being present and mindful about it and having the mindset about, okay, you look what you've done. I'm 54 years old and I just found out literally 2 months ago. And to go through life and do everything you can, it's a true testament to what human beings can do when they put their mind to it, even with disabilities and mental disabilities. And I'm not taking anything away from it. The physical disability that people go through is amazing what they do. But mentally, that battle, that depression. And recently my wife has Waze and she has Venom as the voice, and it's the character from the movie. And the Venom goes, I like this driver. I'm not going to eat them. And something clicked about the darkness that is completely wrapped around you when you're in depression. And it hit me yesterday that if I can treat depression like venom, that comic relief in my life, I then dehumanize or demonize that depression. And it's worked out into a way that when that darkness approaches, I kind of just chuckle because that's the only way I can do with it. And for people that are listening that have loved ones or know people that are going through depression, God love you, because we can't articulate what we're going through when we're going through depression. We just see darkness. And little by little, things have to happen within inside us that start cracking it. The old saying, and the reason why we have so many sayings, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't teach it to drink it. And that's one of the things about depression. And I think that's one of the reasons why when I sat down and said, I got to start talking about this, I got to start, shaking the cage and getting onto Mount Everest and screaming about mental health, is because society dictates that we're not supposed to talk about it because we're men. And I'm specifically speaking to men.
Yeah.
And
but it's not only men, I got to say. It's not only men.
I know. Yeah. I 100% agree with you. But here's the thing. And this is the differences between society. And it goes culturally too, because I got a really good story about that just happened in Canada. When your daughter falls and hurts herself, you have a certain way of talking to her than you do your son. When your son falls and gets hurt, it's, come on, shake it up, suck it up, buttercup, there's no crying. Your daughter falls, oh, come here, let me see it, totally different thing. Whether or not that's the right thing to do, that's here nor there. What I think it is that we're teaching our boys to then suppress our emotions, that we are
Yeah.
not able to express ourselves. So I'm taking it. One of the biggest things I was, I guess, penalized for my father was I wore my face was my no filter. You knew my expression. I wore my emotions on my sleeve or my shoulder. You knew exactly what it was. And he always used that as a negative towards me. And I said, you
Yeah.
know what, screw this. I'm going to use this as a positive. And this is the way I'm going to do this. And I powered through what I needed to. And that's why I talk about things.
Yeah. Well, so as you talk about it, tell me about the kinds of speaking engagements you're out there doing. What kinds of platforms are you looking for? And you're being invited to, and I'm going to wager a guess that a lot of that has picked up after your book because they went, dang, this guy knows a lot about this topic and he's willing to talk about it.
Yeah. So I originally go out and I speak about food and the importance of food, and being a food addicted person, it kind of ties into the mental health aspect of it. And I'll bring it up in my presentations, but specifically with Cater Source, which I'm going to in February. I've done not one, but two, and I'm going to be doing a third one about mental health. And what I talk about specifically is how businesses can actually reward themselves by talking about, specifically the restaurant industry, reward themselves about talking about mental health. Because so many times when you don't talk about it, it goes unseen. We're number 9 as far as that category, as far as suicide is concerned, but we're also number 1 in all the addictions.
Yeah.
So they kind of entwine together if we can work together. And a lot of times I get a group of people in this room, 100 to 400 people, and I go, first question is, who's doing mental health and talking about it? And people raise their hand. My next question is, how are you doing it? When are you doing it? And then I ask who's not doing it. And I go, everybody who didn't raise their hand before should be raising their hand now. And then I go, well, then you need to get with this person to talk about what they're doing so then you can implement. If the wheel's not broken, just pick what they're doing already. If it works, just run with it. Reinvent it to your own style when you get back to your own office or your business, whatever. But here's the reason why. If we're not talking about mental health and we have people that are going through it, you're going to have churn. Churn means that you're going to have to then train another person. That's more money out of your pocket. You could have a superstar, and if they leave you, you lost a superstar. The flip side of for the employee looks at it as, wow, I'm not just a number. See, corporate America has always been about, case in point, the poor CEO that was gunned down. They went ahead and had that meeting. I mean, true testament. And we always say it in the industry. If you died tomorrow, about an hour after you passed away, your job is putting your position out there. They don't care. Your family's still grieving. So that knowledge, and people know that, what a great concept for companies to go out and show that they care about their employees than to show mental health.
I always send out an email after these interviews and kind of give everybody one piece of action that they can take immediately, and a couple of resources they can use. And so I'll get you to send me a couple of resources that I can share.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that number one takeaway might be to normalize talking about mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. The more we talk about it, I think the more we are demonizing it, because back in the day, and Brighton Breach Memoirs, Neil Simon, and it was a great movie. Anytime they talked about, I had diarrhea, you don't talk. We're able to talk about COVID. We're able to talk about the flu. We're talking about whatever physical attributes are bothering you. But as soon as you say, yeah, my depression's really kicking in, you're like, whoa, wait, what? And that's where we need to take society to the next level. And culturally, and I was talking about Canada, we're up in Canada doing a consulting job for a quick service restaurant. And we got to talking, and I said something about my book. And most of the employees are from India, the subcontinent. And two of the employees were like, mental health. And I'm like, yeah. I said, here in the United States, in the United States, it was in Canada. So in the United States, we have it where, and as I told you before, we tell boys, get up, suck it up, buttercup. And it was ironic. That's the same thing they do to men in India.
Yeah.
And one of the young ladies was like, I tell my husband if he's feeling wrong, bad, I want to listen to him. I want to hear his emotions, but he doesn't want to tell me them. Again, that's because it's that whole society dictates things that we're going to be in a padded room with the, straight jacket on because we're loony. And
Yeah.
not saying that people do have problems where they need to go into that institution, but that fear is what stops a lot of people from actually questioning what's going on in their mind. And that's what we need
Yeah.
to change.
And I would say another thing I've heard you talk about, and maybe this is so we've got what goes on the company side, but if we look at what's going on the individual side, one of the things they can do is to get better about setting some boundaries.
Yeah.
So, do you want to talk about boundaries a little bit?
Yeah, I think boundaries are the most necessity that we have. I mean, especially in my industry, we have been groomed. Yes, chef. We chef, no matter what. And we're service oriented. So when a guest wants something, we chef. We got to do it. And it then goes over to like, oh, do you want me to go in the kitchen? And we always end up in the kitchen. Or do you want to do this? We always there. But setting those boundaries actually gives you the time to re-energize yourself. There's no downfall to yourself, or you have to kick yourself up, beat yourself up because you had to say yes to something that you really didn't want to do because you felt pressured. If you're feeling pressured to do something, you're in the wrong relationship. Nobody should be pressuring you to do anything. They should understand the first time you say, listen, I really don't, or I can't do that because of XYZ reason. And if you feel pressured, that's when you go, no, this is not going to work for us. So if you're going to keep on doing this, I'm going to have to seek an alternate route. And if that means you have to leave your job, then that's up to you. But I think mental health is more important than the physical attribute of health. Because if you don't have your mental capacities with you, then the physical capacity follows suit.
Yep. And I'm going to say that again because I just heard a phrase I loved. So I want everybody to get it. If you feel pressured, you are in the wrong relationship. And that means in your job and it means at home. So learn to set some boundaries. And that's a whole other conversation. But learn the techniques of setting some boundaries so that you're able to function at your best and feel good about your life, your job, and what you're accomplishing.
I think the other thing too, when we're talking about mental health, is that we have two of these, which I'm grabbing my ears, and one of this, and I'm pointing at my mouth. A lot of times we use the mouth more often than our ears. And a lot of times when we're talking to somebody and they're telling you something, and especially if it's a leader or a boss, and I'll get to the definitions between those two, and they ask you to do something, and you then just blurt out the first thing that comes to you. And then later on, you're like that Monday quarterback. I should have said this.
Yeah.
Why can't you just say, hey, I'm going to process this for a little bit and I'll get back to you?
Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
That's
I've
genius.
learned that recently. Just that phrase. Paused. I get quiet. They look at me or they're on their phone and I'm like, hey, I just have to process what you just told me. Give me a minute. And then I really search for the right terminology that I want to use. And this gives me another thing. If you're in let's say the level of anger or emotion starts to rise within you, that's the best way to calm yourself down so that it doesn't escalate into something even more.
That's great.
Thank you. Whether it's a romantic relationship or work relationship or a friend relationship, it gives that sense of, hey, I'm going to take a pause for the cause, figure out what I really want to say, and then go from there.
Yeah. I had, not to get off on a tangent of my own, but I had a boss like that 20 years ago who would sort of ambush people. And they felt the need to, they got rattled. They felt the need to respond immediately. And even then, that was my advice to them was don't say, that's such a good thought. I'm going to get back to you on that. And it stopped.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a great technique. So if again, you take away nothing else, try that one in your life because it serves many useful purposes.
Yeah. And I think, getting to the boss and leadership, and I think we need to define those two. The boss is the one that takes all the credit. Doesn't work as a team. It's all or nothing towards the boss. a leader steps in and says, here's the problem. What do you think? And they
Yeah.
bring the team in to get their knowledge. One, that gives the buy-in for the team to actually go, they really appreciate my view and my thought process. Like I do with my daughter when she brings something over and she says, Dad, what do you think about this? You know, at first you're like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. I mean, I love it, because that's what you want to do to your kid. But the problem is we're also teaching our child to always look for that acceptance from someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So I stopped that and I said, what do you think of it? Well, I think it's really cool. You know what? So do I. I think it's really cool too. You did a great job. So I'm taking the way and giving her back the power that she needs to then feel confident within herself that she can do things. And that's what, and I'm not saying I'm a leader and the best leader or whatever, but I've learned from so many people of what's right and what's wrong, that I put the things together where how I felt when I was going up in the ranks of the kitchen or even whatever business, and how I was treated and how I felt when I was treated, and how I don't want that to ever happen when I have to correct somebody or do something in the negative way. I always do it in a way that it's only the two of us.
Yeah.
I don't want to embarrass that person, because then they don't feel that way. They feel deflated and defeated. And what are they going to do? They're not going to work well for me.
Right.
What a mistake is a mistake. It's a learning opportunity. It's not a failure. Here's the thing. It's a reflection on you if that person makes the mistake, because you probably didn't communicate exactly what you wanted or needed that person to do.
Yeah.
That's a leader.
Yes.
A boss just points.
Yeah. That's a good summed up definition. The boss just points. Let's talk about your book for a second. It's a little different from most books because it's got a lot of memoir and storytelling in it, and a lot of close looks at the mental health situation, but it's also got recipes in it, because you are in fact, putting yourself out there as the food addicted chef and what you did about it. So you've gone in and you've reworked a lot of recipes. So I just wanted to give people kind of a sense, and I'll post a link to it so everybody can find it. But how even then you were creating something new, something different when you decided to do this book. And I'm wondering what has changed or what has happened since you published the book. What did that book end up doing for you? Did it unlock new opportunities? Did it, raise visibility? What did it do?
It's doing what I wanted to do. I didn't care about the money part of it. Obviously, you want to make something from it. But for me, it was more of the messaging getting out there. I think that's the most important thing. And from that, it's given me the opportunity to go around and talk about mental health. And that's what I'm known for. Mm-hmm. The side effect, because, we're always talking about side effects of different things. I never knew that the book was going to touch that many lives.
Mm. And that's what really counts. Yeah. Well, and I always tell people, it's the book. We put ourselves out there in many ways. So it might be on LinkedIn. It might be hosting a podcast. It, could be in your blog. So we put out our messages in a lot of different ways. But until you've pulled that into a book and told a story that shares who you are and how you can help other people, I think you're missing opportunities. So I'm really happy for you that you grabbed that, because at the end of the day, even though you have those speaking opportunities and higher visibility than you had before, you're also, at the end of the day, truly changing lives.
Yeah, I never thought about that. I guess it's the humble side. I don't. Yeah. I have a friend of mine, Jonathan Rodriguez. He's a local celebrity chef, and we actually collab now. He started this thing called FOMO Chefs. It's a really cool thing that we're doing. And I remember Jonathan got the book, and he would text me. He's like, "Bro, why'd you write about me?" And it was like, my God, that story. And I would get texts from different people like this.
Yeah.
And I never knew that the book was going to emulate so passionately, to have people literally get the book and then, I can't put this down. Like I started reading it and I just can't put this down. Not because it's my story, it's because the way I wanted to have it perceived was, hey, you're not alone. It's okay not to be okay. And that first part of it, you know, we're entering this realm of not being, or something so new. And I remember you were like, I've never seen this done ever. You know, and I asked you, like, where does this book go on Amazon? You're like, mental health. Da, 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 da.
Little research. Yeah.
And because it was so, and no one, like you said, no one has ever done that before. And it's a niche that I think needs to be talked about. I mean, obviously we just had that actor director who just completed suicide 2 weeks ago. You know, every time I see that, I'm just like, I wonder one thing that could have saved that person, one thing. And, you know, there's a wonderful story I was watching, and I'll tell it briefly. A rabbi was talking about how a San Francisco police officer would have to investigate when somebody completed suicide off the Golden Gate Bridge. This one thing that the guy was talking to the rabbi about, he's like, I will never forget this one. Went into the house, there was the note, and in the note, the guy stated, if one person says hello to me, I will turn around and I won't.
Wow.
And that shook my soul. Literally.
I just got chills.
Right?
Yeah.
So that was like the universe coming to me and saying, hey, what you're doing could save somebody's life. And that's why we do the hashtag Just One Life. I really think that the more we talk about things, the more we're open about it. And you don't have to be as open as I am. I'm like, you know, here's the book, and people are like, what do you do? And I'm like, you know, you can look anywhere on my social media and you can find out who I am, because that's me. I don't sugarcoat anything. I don't try to. I think, you know, living this life and having the opportunity to teach my daughter what I'm going through so that she can have coping mechanisms later on in life, and to be a better person, to be the best version of herself. What more can a parent want? I mean, we can smother them with materialistic things, but at the end of the day, we don't take that with us. And those are just stuff. But to leave a legacy behind, that's important to me.
Well, if anybody wants to follow Jeffrey, where are we going to look for you?
Oh my gosh. Pretty much every social media, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, Snapchat, Facebook, TikTok, either Chef Jeffrey Schlissel or the Bacon Cartel. You can actually find me on thebaconcartel.com, and we have all of our food porn up there as well. And then we're going to have some of the events. We just hooked up with a Ever After Farms. They have 9 barns in Florida, and we're doing actual farm to table dinners. And we're doing a whole series, and our first one is Valentine's Day, and it's just going to be spectacular because it's actually going to be right on a vineyard.
Oh,
yeah.
Tell me where, like, what part of Florida is that going to be in? Because I'm going to Florida in sometime in the next 2 or 3 months. So
Sonoma Park. So it's just near St. Augustine in Hastings, Florida. And what we're doing is we're trying to bring awareness to the farmers. So I'm also a farmer advocate as well, and the health aspect of it, because right now the average age of farmers completing suicide is 56 years old.
Oh my stars.
Yeah. Because you have to think about when they lose their land, or we're not subsidized in Florida. If you're not growing food for animal, you're not getting subsidized. The government doesn't look at you. So in 77, 78, when there's that huge, and it snowed in Hollywood, Florida, because I was there, they didn't get any money. So a lot of farms closed. You know, and the other thing too is we're in Florida, and what do you want to be around Florida? The water. And within the state, if you're smack dab in the middle, you're 60 miles from the ocean, give or take, in a rock throw. So when you have these developers coming in and they flash this money towards a farmer and be like, well, my kid doesn't want to do this because I wanted them to grow up and get out of it, we're losing farmers by the truckloads, not just to suicide, but to development. Problem with that, to me, forget about being the chef, is that I have to start looking at getting food in from Mexico or Chile or, you know, wherever. Well, if I don't have food and they don't want to send it to us, we've got a national security problem.
Yeah.
And I don't want that to happen. Plus, I want food locally so that I don't have to worry about the carbon footprint. So when I come locally and I get with the farmers, I'm helping them connect with actual people that can go to their farms, their website, and purchase food from them directly. And so we're helping develop that business as well. We're trying to develop this community within Florida. And when I mean Florida, all of Florida, that we can have where people can say, hey, I'm up in Jacksonville. Where can I go? Hey, Panoma Park. We have 3 barns straight across Tampa, Orlando that we're going to be doing farm to table. We have one in Miami. We're going to be doing the farm to table. We did one last month in December in the middle of the Okeechobee, which like north of Okeechobee, Lake Okeechobee. And let me tell you something, there's nothing but farms out there. Nothing. But we actually had some people there that love the farm to table idea, and they were just digging it. So it's something that we need to get better on as far as the community here in Florida and get connecting chefs with the farmers. So that's the next thing we need to work on.
I'm going to pick up that thread for just a second, because I think that's another excellent example of thought leadership. It's looking at a problem, saying, this is happening and I don't want this to happen. What can I do about it? And what can I talk about that will have an impact and influence on this problem? So you looked at it, you said, I don't want to be importing all my food. Now what? And as a chef, you're uniquely positioned to go out to these farmers who are growing the food and say, how can we get together and raise awareness, again, raise the visibility of what is happening here, and give people an awesome food experience, something memorable, so that they want to go out and talk about that to other people. That, to me, is another great example of thought leadership.
Thank you. It's all about the experience, right? From COVID 4 years ago, people were locked in their homes. We're all worried about getting this disease and so on and so forth. And, I looked at it as we came out of it, we lost the experience to going out. One of the things about the restaurant industry, it's not just about going out and getting food that you've never tasted before, or that you feel compelled, I don't want to cook, I'm just going to go out to eat. And that's where the mindset has gotten to, right? I just want to go out to eat because I don't want to cook. But we forgot about the one thing, the experience. And I think that's the biggest thing, is the experience aspect of it, because the more we can experience cuisine and have somebody do something for us, we're just wowed. Did you see that? Did you taste that? And have people start talking about it and have them experience something that they've never experienced before, even though it's something they might have seen. Like, one of the entrees we're going to be serving is filet mignon and obviously surf and turf, but we don't want to do it the normal surf and turf, lobster tail and a beef tenderloin. We're actually doing tenderloins, and we're going to do a lobster foam to give it the essence of the lobster in it. So to create this, and it's Florida lobster and it's Florida meat. So everything we're going to be doing, we're concentrating as much as we possibly can on local.
And that's going to be my next takeaway, is create an experience. And, how would we say that? Really raise the visibility, or shine a spotlight on your local people, build that relationship, because those are the people that you're going to count on when you need somebody. So,
I mean, think about this. One of the things I saw during COVID, it was logistics. How was the truck going to get from California to Florida, or from Florida to New York? And then there were all these issues where, forget about the toilet paper running out, but all the other things. We had a farmer here in Florida that backholed or mold into the ground 1 million pounds of green beans. And everybody's like, well, thank God they did that. And I'm like, wait, stop. We're forgetting about the water, the natural resources. Let's broaden it. The natural resources, the energy, and the money that it took to grow those things, just to put it back into the land like that. That's how is that good?
Yeah.
So I looked at it as like, how can we keep farmers in business? How can we get people to really understand? Like, I live 13 minutes from the first farm, 13 minutes. And people didn't know that. Like, my brother-in-law and his kids have lived here for 21 years, had no idea there was a farm 13 minutes away.
Wow.
So the more we show the spotlight, not only on farms, but on locally driven businesses, guess what? We're keeping it in our own community. It's not going from the big conglomerates and they make all that money to where that they take it and they do with what they want. It stays locally, and it helps our community, not theirs.
Yep. Jeffrey, I have loved this conversation, and I could talk to you for hours on end. But I think that's a good spot to have people pause and reflect, because we've dropped some heavy things to think about. So I'm hoping people walk away from this, number one, thinking about their own thought leadership. Number two, normalizing mental health. And number three, really looking at how they can collaborate locally with someone who, with a local business, and make everybody even stronger. So back to collaborations, which I have talked about on this podcast before. So I think look for a local collaboration, and more specifically, if you're in a position to do something with your local farmer, even better. Brownie points for that.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Thanks so much. I know you and I will talk again sometime soon. I will make sure that all the links are posted in the show notes so that people can easily find you.
I appreciate it very much.